Welcome to the Fintech Times News and Views podcast. Established in 2016, the Fintech Times is a global multimedia news outlet centered around the world's first leading fintech newspaper. We report on the latest and brightest ideas from the fintech world. Follow the conversation using hashtag TFD News and Views and follow us at the Fintech Times.
Hello and welcome back to the Fintech Times News and Views podcast. For a second week running, we've only got a two-person show for you. This week, Polly is sadly not joining us, but me and Francis are here to bring you some of the latest fintech news. So, Francis, how have you been? What's new?
Yeah, I'm not too bad. It's been yet again another busy week. It's a shame that Polly's not here. It would have been nice to have the trio back, but that just builds up the anticipation for when we are all eventually here again, which will hopefully be next week, maybe, hopefully. Fingers crossed. But yeah, no, it's been a good week, and I'm looking forward to what we're going to be talking about today.
Yeah, we've got some good topics that I think are going to be quite interesting to talk about. And with that in mind, what article are you bringing to the table today?
So today I'm going to be discussing INZMO and how it has launched a new rental bot to ease dispute tensions between tenants and landlords.
Fantastic. And I'm going to be talking about what it would take for us to see an NFT revival, which feels like a bit of a throwback to me. But what do you want to do? Do you want to take it away and go first?
Yeah, sure, I'll go first. So, yeah, today my article is once again sort of about something that we've probably heard a fair amount about in AI chatbots and sort of advice bots. And we've sort of spoken about how they've not always been the most helpful of things, but in this instance, I think it is, quite helpful. So, despite best efforts from tenants and landlords, well, I say that a bit loosely, to be honest. I'm sure everyone's had a few experiences where best efforts aren't really on show, but disputes are always bound to happen and can often only be resolved with legal support. And in Germany, tenancy legal issues are one of the most common areas requiring legal support, as almost half the population live in rented accommodation. So as a result of this, INZMO has launched a new AI chatbot called the RentalBot, which enables both landlords and tenants to get urgent, informed, and affordable responses on common rental issues and disputes. So the RentalBot uses natural language processing and machine learning algorithms to understand user queries, analyze relevant legal information, and provide clear guidance on rental laws and common disputes. It can assist users with issues such as rental increases and pricing, evictions, deposit disputes, maintenance and repair issues, and lease terms and contractual obligations. So the bot breaks down complex legal terminology to provide practical, easy to understand information to tenants and landlords. And the service is a 24/7 service and are currently available in English and German. So far so good. It sounds really great. But the one thing that I found sort of difficult to understand with it is that then the pricing comes in, and it's €4.99 for 24 hours access to the rental bot, and this will be increased to $9.99 from June onwards, and there will be a possible subscription service for this. Now, we've also spoken about subscription services on the podcast before, and if they're a dying art or if they are sort of, they have their place. What I wanted to discuss with you really is a chatbot something like this, something that people should be paying for, or is it something that should, be free for everyone to use and to gain access to? And is this really a good example of where a subscription model could be useful? Maybe from a landlord's perspective it could, but from a tenant's I'm not so sure. But yeah, I wanted to sort of discuss it with you because in my opinion, it feels wrong for an AI chatbot to be a paid for service. Not necessarily wrong, but it feels like, why would you pay for that which may or may not have the answers you're looking for? Whereas if you spoke to somebody from a legal representative, they would be able to tailor their answers for you. So I wanted to get your thoughts. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting kind of dilemma, really. Part of me feels like it does seem like a very useful service. It's an area where there are a lot of pain points. People are often not aware of their rights when it comes to, their landlords and when they're renting a property. And I would guess, I don't know for sure, but that it's quite a similar situation in Germany as it is here. And it can be really difficult to enforce laws that even, do exist to try and make sure that your landlord takes care of you, to actually get them to take action. And it's so difficult. So I think having this kind of chatbot that can point you in the right direction is so useful. And then you kind of have the argument of, well, if it is so useful, why can't the sort of developers be charging for it, whether it be for a subscription service or a one-time fee? Or I guess they wouldn't be making the bot if there wasn't a financial incentive for them in the first place. So yeah, I think there's definitely an argument to be had that it's the type of thing that maybe should be accessible for all. But at the end of the day, whatever company gets there first and is able to develop a good solution for this kind of problem, maybe there's a fair assumption that they are going to be able to charge for it, and therefore people are going to have to pay for it. What do you think?
Yeah, I definitely agree, and I do think you're right. It is a very, very good service, and what it is offering can, like you said, it really help with a lot of pain points that exist between tenants and landlords. And I do suppose you're right that it is such a unique, not a unique offering necessarily, but it is such an offering that it does make sense that it can be charged for. The only reason that I think or the only reason I find it weird is when you go to sort of like a customer service on most places, that's where you'll find the AI chatbot to sort of provide help. I suppose because this isn't necessarily, I mean, you're not going to, unless you're going to like a real estate agent or somewhere like that, or an estate agent, I should say, you're not gonna, or their website. That's the only place that I think it would make sense to be. So in that regard, to gain access to it, it makes sense that you have to pay like a one-off fee. But I don't know. For me, it just feels like, why would you pay for a possibility of AI really fixing a solution for you, when I feel like most tenants, and perhaps it's just from a tenant's point of view that I'm looking at, but I feel like most tenants would be more inclined to go with human help if they had an issue rather than just a chatbot. But I'm not sure. I think you're definitely right that there is a valid argument as to why it should be paid for, and I don't know. It doesn't sit well with me.
No, I see what you mean, but I feel like it's definitely a useful service if they continue to offer the sort of pay per consult kind of fee, where if you just need it like a one-time fee, you get access to the chatbot for 24 hours or however long your session lasts. It might be a case of it's not too expensive, like what I think you said, for €5 for the sort of one individual consult. So I think that for instant help, if you're trying to get personal legal help from a human, firstly it might cost a lot more money because you're paying for someone's expertise. They charge higher fees, and it might be slower to actually get that help. They might say, oh, you have to book an appointment. At least this way it's instant help. Where you'd like to think that all the information is going to be well up to date on the chatbot, and it's going to be able to help you with your inquiry. So obviously without us using the chatbot, it's hard for us to say exactly how helpful it is, but I do see a place for it, especially, it's a very useful service, and it's one that I can't imagine has many competitors at the moment. Obviously, AI, as it grows, we're going to see more and more competitors entering all kinds of industries and spaces. So, yeah, I feel like I'm not quite as against the fee, but I'm sure as competition goes, you'd almost expect the fees to drop and drop and drop because there's so much competitiveness between companies. They want people to use their chatbot or whatever. So yeah, I think it's an interesting space to look into. But overall, I quite like the concept, to be fair.
No, I do like the concept. I think perhaps sort of I've got a bias going into it, is the amount of times that I've tried to use a chatbot for customer service in it, and it just hasn't helped, that I'm thinking, imagine paying for that and it not helping. So perhaps I've got sort of like a bias going into it. But yeah, I think it will definitely be an interesting area if there is more competition that gets involved. And truly, like you said, how useful it will actually be. I'd like to think it would be very helpful. And I think it would be very cool if it was. But yeah, why don't we move on to your article?
Yeah, definitely. So as you well know, this month the Fintech Times is focusing on all things digital assets. That's our monthly theme. And one of the questions that we posed to industry leaders was all about NFTs and whether they have a place in the future of finance. So obviously NFTs took the world by storm in 2020, 2021, I think. And seemingly everyone and their mum were talking about it. We were seeing NFTs pop up in the most random places, TV shows, chat shows, everywhere. Celebrities were investing in them and endorsing artwork in NFTs. The one that sticks out to me is, I think, one of the most like publicized ones was like the Bored Ape, which so many celebrities had like their own version they were selling and things like that. companies were creating their own like NFTs and their own virtual NFT art galleries. I think weirdly the one that sticks in my mind for some reason is I remember Burger King made one, and they had like Burger King NFT art and like a little virtual world that you could walk around and look at the sort of burger art or whatever it was. But anyway, a lot of people basically spent so much money on NFTs to become the sole owner of different NFT art. And as we know, it didn't take long for the bubble to burst, and a lot of that hype died down completely, really, really quickly. And most NFTs lost the majority, if not all, of their value and left the space just looking quite bleak. But we reached out to various experts, and they basically discussed what it could take for NFTs to enjoy success again. Could they be making a comeback at some point, and in what way? And the majority of these sort of experts explained that NFTs have to find a new use case beyond the sort of one that got so much hype, beyond just NFT art. And the most popular suggestion that most of them agreed on was that, NFTs, the most promising solution is them representing real world assets. So that's like physical goods, tickets, or memberships. And what NFTs can do is enable the tokenization of these assets and make them more accessible and transferable online. So, like, for example, an NFT could be linked to, I won't say art, but like can be linked to any physical object like a car. And then the ownership of the NFT can be transferred along with the ownership of the physical asset. And then that means that NFTs can be used to prove the authenticity of a physical asset as well, because you'll be able to trace its history and origin on the blockchain, which isn't, or which can't be edited. So I thought, this is quite an interesting use case. And really where I want to get your take on this, I really just want to know, what's your current view on NFTs? How much are you aware of just them existing at this point and this type of use case? Do you think this is the type of thing that will keep the tech alive? And, could this NFT hype that we had in 2020 or 2021 ever return, or is it going to be more of a useful technology, but it just sits in the background from now on? What are you thinking?
I don't think it will ever return like it in the same way that it did. I mean, NFTs might grow in a sense, but I don't think they'll ever have that sort of mainstream hype where everyone is really looking to get involved in one way or another. I remember, I think it was during 2021, I sat down with the founder of an NFT, the Golf Junkies NFT, in fact. And I remember speaking to him, and he was telling me that the use case of it was that it was going to give people access to these very exclusive golfing events, and that they would be able to meet pros, and they'd be able to take part in these really exclusive tournaments. And I remember thinking at the time that that is what NFTs are really helpful for. They act as a key to these exclusive societies, and it's sort of almost just like a token for your subscription, really. And when you put it like that, it does sound perhaps not as exciting as the potential that everyone was talking about with, like you said, the Bored Apes and stuff. But I do think that is probably the best way that NFTs can go forward, is by facilitating things in the real world and representing real world assets. And that, I think it's interesting that was the main consensus from all the experts as well in the article, is that they all sort of seem to say the same thing, which makes me think that going forward, I want to say that the sort of the JPEGs that everyone had, that's probably going to be a thing of the past. I don't think they're coming back anymore. Definitely not in the same way that they were, at least. But yeah, no. Overall, I think it will be an interesting space to keep an eye on. But I also think sort of the development of sort of Web3 and the metaverse as well will play a massive part in the development, or the sort of the comeback of NFTs, I suppose, because I think those two do go really hand in hand. And so if one succeeds, I think the other will most likely follow suit to an extent, not necessarily to the same degree, but yeah, to some extent, I think NFTs will come back, but definitely not in the way that we knew them to be.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. And I find the sort of idea of the evolution of Web3 and the metaverse like quite interesting, because even to this day, I mean, we've been talking about it for years now, but we don't really see any genuine like big digital world that everyone's able to join, mainly because of the sort of cost of the technology for the headsets and things like that. So, obviously VR headsets and things cost a lot of money. People aren't necessarily seeing a reason to invest in that kind of technology, and therefore there's been less investment in the sort of creation of the digital worlds that go along with that. So I always wonder if it's always going to be a concept and less of a sort of really popular thing. I think obviously, you've got the sort of idea of like Ready Player One type world, and then I don't know. I always wonder if we're ever actually going to get to a point where everyone's sitting in the metaverse, or if it is going to be always like eventually this could happen. But for going back to NFTs, I think the sort of use case that we have here of sort of representing real world assets is really nice, and it is something that is very useful and presents a great way to store information and store sort of the history of real world assets. So yeah, I think that overall it's hard to see NFT technology dying out completely because it does have this very good use case. But as you said, the hype probably won't return because it's just not something that grips people's attention in the way that the sort of original art did, and because there was so much money being thrown around with it, I think that's what captured people's attention the most, even if they didn't actually understand what an NFT was. I mean, I remember watching videos of people being like, I have no idea what they are, and trying to describe why they were so expensive compared to just like an ordinary piece of digital art. So I think it's always been a confusing space, and I think that's probably going to continue. But yeah, there's a really good opportunity for the space to continue on, and hopefully, it does a good job in sort of representing these tickets and assets.
Yeah, completely agree with that.
So yeah, I think we've covered these two topics very, very nicely. So we'll wrap it up there. But obviously, if you want to hear anything more about the news we've spoken about today or any other fintech news and insights, make sure you head over to the fintechtimes.com. And now let's finish off with what I learned this week. So every week we get so much new news and information about fintech hitting our inboxes. So we like to pick something new that we've learned to share with you. So Francis, what is it you've learned this week?
So this week I learnt about a new platform called Beacon that has launched to make life or transitioning to Canadian life easier for immigrants. And I thought it was a really sort of, as we're gearing up for DE&I and FinTech for Good in the next couple of months, I thought it was a really nice sort of taster for what's to come of helping communities that are struggling.
Very nice. And this week I learned that, I think it's pronounced Weobank, which is based in the Middle East, has achieved profitability in its full first year of operations, which I think just nicely highlights the growth of financial services in the Middle East and that region. So yeah, but anyway, we've done really well, I think, and just about survived without Polly. And we're obviously looking forward to having her back next week. But thank you for joining me today, Francis, and I will see you then.
See you next week.
Thanks for listening to the Fintech Times News and Views podcast. Don't miss next week's episode and continue the conversation using #TFT News and Views and follow us at the Fintech Times.